was a Thursday afternoon at Eisenberg High in Elkhart, Indiana, a day where the ticking clock seemed to draw more attention than the lessons on the board. Mr. Braddock, the calculus teacher, was known for his sharp tongue, impatience, and quick sarcasm. Students didn't exactly hate him, but they certainly didn't look forward to his class. The room felt stagnant. Equations lined the whiteboard, and the air smelled faintly of eraser dust and old sneakers. Phones were tucked under desks, some pretending to pay attention, others staring out the window, lost in thought. Then, without warning, the atmosphere shifted. As Mr. Braddock continued writing another derivative on the board, a faint squeak echoed from the hallway. The janitor, Mr. Dorsey, was mopping as he always did with his steady, deliberate pace. Mr. Braddock paused mid-sentence, glanced at the door, and cracked a half-smile. "Well, look who's here," he said, pointing toward the hallway. "Mr. Dorsey, tell me you think you can solve this one." He tapped the board with his marker as if issuing a challenge. The class burst into laughter, not loud, but enough to make everyone shift uncomfortably in their seats, unsure of whether to laugh or not. "Come on, Lamar," Mr. Braddock continued. "You always look like you've got something on your mind." Lamar Dorsey, the 52-year-old janitor, stood in the hallway with his mop in hand, wearing his standard forest green uniform, clean but faded with L. Dorsey stitched over the chest pocket. He didn't flinch. He didn't even blink. He just stared into the room. Then slowly, Lamar stepped inside. The mop leaned against the wall, and some students sat up straighter, unsure of what was about to happen. Was he going to throw in a sarcastic comeback and walk out? Maybe crack a joke? But no, Lamar didn't do that. Instead, he walked to the front of the room. "You mind?" he asked calmly, gesturing toward the board. Mr. Braddock raised an eyebrow. "Be my guest." A few phones slid out from under desks, but no one stopped Lamar. He picked up the marker, glanced at the equation, and paused, not out of hesitation, but as if he were thinking deeply, like someone studying a familiar map. After a slight squint, he began to write. No showmanship, no flair, just slow, deliberate strokes, one line after another. The room fell into an eerie stillness. The only sounds were the marker on the whiteboard and a chair creaking as someone leaned forward. Mr. Braddock crossed his arms and watched intently. His expression didn't change, but his jaw tightened. Lamar worked through the problem methodically, his voice low and patient. "See this? Here's a chain rule problem," he explained, breaking down the steps. "But the trick is recognizing the inner function first. Once you isolate that, it becomes much cleaner." Lamar moved with the precision of someone who had done this many times before, not just solving math problems, but teaching them. His tone wasn't smug. It was simple, clear, and almost as though he had spent more time teaching than mopping. When he finished, he capped the marker and stepped back. The board was now filled with clean, organized work. "That's one way to do it," Lamar said, glancing at Mr. Braddock, then the class. For a moment, no one moved. A junior in the back muttered, "He got it right." Mr. Braddock's mouth opened slightly, but nothing came out. He stood there, silent, almost shocked. The tension in the room grew thicker than any joke Mr. Braddock could have made. Lamar, without a hint of fanfare, nodded politely and walked back toward the door, his mop in hand. No applause, no boasting, just quiet confidence. It was as though he hadn't just turned the room upside down, but had done it without breaking a sweat. As Lamar reached the door, no one had moved for 10 seconds. It was as if the class had just been pulled out of a dream and dropped into something real. Someone finally broke the silence. "Wait," said Wes Hanley, a senior in the front row, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Did he just do that? In his head?" The class looked back at the board, as if the answer might somehow change. Mr. Braddock, finally speaking, said flatly, "Well, he got the right answer." His usual sarcasm was absent, replaced by something more akin to confusion, or maybe even discomfort. Lamar glanced back, his expression unchanged. "I spent a lot of time with numbers a long time ago," he said with a small shrug. "They never left." A few students laughed, Not at him this time, but because the tension had cracked. Lamar didn't wait for a response. He just left, his shoes squeaking softly down the hallway as if nothing had happened, as if he hadn't just solved a college-level problem in under 3 minutes, without a calculator. That's when the phones came out. Carly Benson, a junior in the 3rd row, had already filmed the entire thing, and by the time the bell rang, she was editing the clip in the hallway. It was all anyone could talk about. "Did you see Mr. Dorsey?" Braddock's face. Man, he looked like someone unplugged him. Where did he learn that stuff? I thought he just cleaned floors. By lunch, the video was already on TikTok and Instagram. It wasn't polished, just a shaky shot of Lamar's hands moving across the board, with a quiet voice in the background whispering, "Yo, he's solving it." The caption read, "Our janitor just smoked the calculus teacher." Some laughed, others stared, but the buzz kept growing. In the teacher's lounge, things weren't much quieter. "You're telling me he did a full derivative chain problem in his head?" asked Miss Lynn, the physics teacher, mid-bite into her sandwich. She stopped chewing. "He did," muttered Mr. Crane, the English teacher. "Didn't use notes, didn't even pause. It was like muscle memory." At the corner table, Mr. Braddock sat pretending to grade papers. He didn't say a word, but Principal Everett did. "He's been here 6 years. No one ever mentioned he had an academic background." People shook their heads. Nobody really knew much about Lamar. He came in early, left late. Floors were always clean. Light bulbs never burned out for more than a day. The man worked in silence. But now he wasn't just the man with the mop. Back in the hallway, a group of students stood outside the janitor's closet, not to complain about a spill or ask for a broom, but because they just wanted to talk to him. One kid, a 12-year-old clutching his geometry book, asked, "Do you tutor, Mr. Dorsey?" Lamar blinked, a bit surprised. "I haven't in a long time." "You should," the kid said. Lamar chuckled, but it wasn't dismissive, just surprised. The next day, in 3rd period, Braddock's mood was different. He didn't crack jokes. He didn't randomly call on students. He taught with his eyes fixed on the board, his voice more restrained than usual. Nobody said it outright, but everyone noticed. After class, Wes, a senior, walked up to him. "Mr. Braddock, that thing with Mr. Dorsey yesterday, he used the same method you showed us last week. The chain rule, right?" Braddock nodded once. "Correct. Only he explained it better," Wes added. Braddock didn't answer, but what truly shocked them wasn't the solution. It was what Lamar had said afterward. Lamar hadn't planned on making a scene. He never liked being the center of attention, not since he was young. So when students started waiting by the maintenance closet just to talk to him, or when teachers gave him long looks in the hallways, he felt off balance. He kept his head down, sticking to his usual routine, refilling paper towels, fixing a leaky faucet, wiping down cafeteria tables. But he could feel it, the change, a shift in how people looked at him, like they were trying to fit him into a new picture they hadn't known existed. It wasn't just curiosity, it was confusion, respect, regret, and it made him uneasy. That afternoon, Principal Everett asked him to stop by the office. He walked in, still wearing his gloves and uniform, a little damp from cleaning under the cafeteria sinks. He removed his cap out of respect. Everett leaned forward in his chair, hands clasped. "Lamar, can I ask you something? Do you have a background in education or engineering?" Lamar hesitated. He looked down for a moment, as if dusting off an old part of himself he hadn't visited in years. "I went to Purdue," he said quietly. "Mechanical engineering, full ride." The principal leaned back in his chair, eyebrows raised. "You're serious?" Lamar shrugged. "Had plans. Things got complicated." For the first time in a long while, Lamar told the story he had kept buried. He'd grown up in Gary, Indiana, smart kid who loved how things worked. Motors, pulleys, anything he could take apart and put back together. His mother, Estelle, raised him and his 2 sisters on her own. She worked overtime at a textile plant but always found time to read to them at night. She believed in education like it was the only way out. "Books first, always," she used to say. "The world will try to shut the door, but if you bring your own key, they can't stop you." Lamar earned that key. Valedictorian, state science fair winner, and then that scholarship to Purdue. Freshman year, he was already tutoring classmates. Professors noticed his name on the attendance sheet and paid attention, but sophomore year, he got a call that changed everything. His mother had collapsed at work, and the doctors said it was late-stage cancer. By the time Lamar got to the hospital, she could barely stay awake. "I can take care of it," she whispered. "Don't come home." He didn't listen. He took a semester off, then another. He picked up jobs, warehouse work, night shifts at a grocery store, anything to pay the bills. Classes faded into the background. So did the dream. By the time his mother passed, everything was scattered. No home to return to, no money to finish his degree, and no guidance counselor asking why he hadn't come back. "I kept thinking I'd get back to school," Lamar told Principal Everett, but one thing turned into another. Life doesn't wait for you. The principal sat in silence, absorbing the weight of the story. It wasn't dramatic, just real, the kind of life you don't hear about unless you ask. Back at home, Lamar kept his transcripts in a box under his bed, alongside a worn Padua sweatshirt, an old calculator, and a photo of him and his mom on orientation day. He never touched the box, but he never threw it away either. Now, all of it was being dragged back into the light. That evening, he sat on the back steps of his small apartment complex. The sky was dim, and the only sound was the hum of distant traffic. He sipped tea from a metal thermos and stared ahead. He hadn't thought about calculus in years, not since that last tutoring gig before he dropped out, and now here it was again, like an old friend knocking at his door. But one decision derailed everything he had worked for in college. Lamar had made a promise to himself: take a short break, get his family back on track, then finish strong. But life doesn't bend to plans, especially not ones built on hope alone. After his mother passed, Lamar returned to Gary, trying to piece things together. His sisters were still in high school, barely getting by. Bills stacked up. The landlord wanted rent, and no one from Paducah called to ask where he'd gone. He took whatever jobs he could get: stockroom loader, janitor at a strip mall, overnight security at a shipping yard, anything that paid enough to keep the lights on. School drifted further into the rear view. At first, he'd called the university now and then, asking about reapplying and transferring credits. They'd send forms, he'd fill them out, but never mail them. Something always got in the way. Then came the breaking point. It was late November when a man named Frank Booker, who owned a flooring company in South Bend, offered Lamar steady work. "You're sharp," Frank said. "Don't waste your time pushing brooms. I'll train you." Lamar had hope again, a real shot, but the day before he was supposed to start, his youngest sister Alana got into a fight at school. A stupid argument that escalated. She'd broken someone's nose and they threatened to expel her. Lamar had to be there. No one else would show up for her, so he missed his first day at the flooring job. Frank gave the spot to someone else, and just like that, a door that could have opened slammed shut. Lamar stopped chasing dreams after that. He started chasing stability. Years blurred together, town to town, job to job. He never had a record, never got into trouble, just survived quietly. By the time he arrived in Elkhart in his early 40s, he wasn't looking for a new beginning, just a steady paycheck. The school district offered benefits. Summers were quiet. He took the janitor position without a second thought. He liked it. Predictable, clean work. Students left him alone. Teachers smiled politely. He didn't expect friendship or connection. He didn't need it. He kept his head down, cleaned up messes, and disappeared before the last bell rang. But numbers never left him. Sometimes, when he passed a math class, he'd glance at the board, see a formula, and finish it in his head. It was like muscle memory, a part of him that stayed sharp even when everything else got buried under routine. He'd go home, make a quiet dinner, grilled fish, brown rice, maybe some carrots, and flip through an old engineering book he kept tucked behind the cereal boxes, just to see if he still had it. He always did. He just never had a reason to show it until Mr. Braddock called him out that day. Now, things were shifting, not just at school, but inside him. He thought about the kids who waited outside his supply closet with questions. He thought about Wes Hanley, stopping by that morning with a folded piece of paper and asking, "Mr. Dorsey, I tried to solve that same problem. Can you check it for me?" Lamar gently explained where Wes had gone wrong without making him feel foolish. Wes smiled when he finally understood, not just out of pride, but out of connection. That kind of thing stayed with you. But not everyone was thrilled. Braddock, for one, had gone quiet. Too quiet. Students noticed, teachers noticed. Being shown up in front of your class by someone you never thought twice about rattled you. He didn't lash out, but his tone got shorter, his patience thinner. When someone mentioned Lamar in the lounge, he changed the subject. He wasn't used to being outshined, especially not by someone who had been invisible to him until now. But life had one more twist waiting, and this one brought Lamar right back to math. The video didn't just stay within Eisenberg High, it spread. It started small. A local student page reposted it with the caption, "When your janitor turns out to be smarter than your teacher." Then it landed on a regional education forum. By the weekend, it had crossed state lines. People online couldn't believe it. They weren't mocking Lamar. They were in awe. "Man broke it down cleaner than my college professor. Someone get this man a classroom and a chalkboard, not a mop." It was proof that you never truly know someone's story. And by Monday morning, Lamar had no idea that his life was about to change. He didn't follow social media, still had a flip phone when he arrived at work. The first thing he did was fix a jammed paper towel dispenser in the girls' bathroom, just like he always did on Mondays. But something felt different. Teachers paused their conversations when he walked past. Students nodded, not out of obligation, but with a strange kind of respect. A few even smiled, as if they were seeing him for the first time. "Hey, Mr. Dorsey," one girl called as he passed the library. "You're kind of famous now?" Lamar chuckled softly. "Don't believe everything you read." But when he turned the corner, Wes Hanley was waiting there with two other students. One held a calculus book, open to a problem highlighted in pink. "Would you mind going through this with us?" Wes asked. Lamar looked around, confused. "You got a free period?" "We made time," Wes said. And just like that, in the middle of a hallway lined with lockers and science fair posters, Lamar sat down on the floor with three teenagers and walked them through a multivariable equation, step by step, line by line. He wasn't talking at them, he was talking with them. It wasn't loud, wasn't flashy, but something meaningful was happening. Down the hall, someone filmed it. No one told Lamar. He wouldn't have liked that. Meanwhile, in the office, Principal Everett was on the phone with someone from the local school board. "Yes, that's correct. Lamar Dorsey's been with us 6 years. No, he's not faculty. He's a custodian." He paused, listening. "Well, I wouldn't call it unorthodox. I'd call it overlooked." Back in the teacher's lounge, Braddock was reading an email forwarded by a parent, a link to the now viral video. No commentary, no subject line, just the link and the phrase, "Thought you'd want to see this." He closed the laptop without watching it. That afternoon, Everett called Lamar back into his office and offered him a seat. Lamar stayed standing. "I've got a request from the board," Everett said. "They want to know if you'd be interested in running an after-school tutoring program. Small group, voluntary, just a trial run." Lamar didn't answer right away. "You'd be paid, of course," Everett added. "It's not about replacing your current role, just adding to it, sharing what you clearly still have." Lamar looked down at his hands, calloused, clean, worn. "I haven't taught in a long time," he said. "You haven't stopped," Everett replied. Lamar looked up. There was no pressure in the man's voice, just a simple invitation. "I'll think about it." That night, Lamar pulled the old cardboard box out from under his bed, the one with the Padua sweatshirt, the transcripts, and the orientation photo. He hadn't touched it in years. He laid everything out on the table. The paper had yellowed a little, the edges curled, but the words were still there. That was the thing about knowledge. It didn't fade. It waited. Lamar didn't need to go viral. He didn't care about the views or the comments, but knowing he could still make a difference, that tugged at something inside him. While some were amazed, others weren't so thrilled by his rising attention. The more attention Lamar received, the more the school began to shift. It started with the kids. They were the first to change. The ones who used to pass him in the hall without a second glance now stopped to say good morning. A few even asked for help with homework between classes. By the end of the second week, a small circle of students had unofficially formed what they called Dorsey sessions. They met in the library after school, notebooks open, heads bent, listening as Lamar explained concepts with clarity no one expected, but everyone respected. Then came the teachers. Most were supportive. Miss Lynn from physics was the first to swing by the library and watch him work with the students. "You've got a gift," she said softly, "and I don't mean just with numbers." But not everyone was thrilled. Mr. Braddock hadn't said a word about Lamar since the day it all happened. In the teacher's lounge, he acted as if nothing had changed, but the bitterness was clear in his silences. He spoke in clipped sentences, never looked Lamar in the eye, never mentioned calculus. When a parent-teacher meeting brought up Lamar's growing influence with the students, Braddock said, "It's good they're interested in math. Let's just make sure we don't blur the line between instruction and inspiration." It sounded polite on the surface, but the tone behind it, everyone heard it. The principal didn't let it slide. He brought Braddock into his office one morning and laid it out plainly. "I know it stung," Everett said, "but Lamar didn't embarrass you. He inspired them." Braddock shifted in his seat. "He's not qualified." "He's educated more than we realized," Everett replied. "And more importantly, he's reaching kids in a way none of us have." Braddock opened his mouth, then closed it. There was nothing to say, not really. Meanwhile, Lamar kept to his routine. He didn't ask for a title, didn't want special treatment. When Principal Everett offered Lamar a modest stipend to continue the tutoring sessions, Lamar accepted, not for the money, but because it felt right. He started carrying a small binder with him, filled with blank worksheets, problems, and notes he'd jotted down by hand. During breaks, he'd sit in the back corner of the cafeteria, scribbling formulas from memory, occasionally nodding at passing students who'd call out, "Hey, Mr. D." One afternoon, Carly, the student who had filmed the original clip, stopped him by the vending machines. "Did you ever want to be a teacher?" she asked. Lamar paused before answering. "I wanted to build things, teach later, maybe, but life had different ideas." "Well," she said, handing him a fresh mechanical pencil, "I think you're doing both now." He smiled. "Thank you." But behind all this good, tension was brewing. Some parents had started calling the school. Most were supportive, but one anonymous complaint made it to the school board. "Is it appropriate for a janitor to tutor students in a school setting? Is he certified? Has he been background checked for instruction?" Everett handled it swiftly. "He's an employee of the district. He's done nothing wrong. If concern was truly the motive, they would have spoken with me directly." He never told Lamar about the complaint, but Lamar could feel something in the air. Not resentment, but resistance. It was as if some people didn't know how to place him now that he didn't fit neatly into the background. Then, one afternoon, Braddock did something no one expected. He walked into the library during one of Lamar's tutoring sessions and quietly watched from a distance as Lamar explained integrals to a group of 4 students. After about 10 minutes, he stepped forward. "You mind if I sit in?" Braddock asked. Lamar looked up, his expression unchanged. He nodded toward the chair. "Long as you don't mind learning something." The students laughed, just enough to lighten the moment. Braddock smirked. For once, it wasn't mean. They sat together that day, said little, but it was a start. But Lamar wasn't interested in titles. He had something else in mind. It wasn't about proving anything anymore. For Lamar Dorsey, standing at the whiteboard in the library with students gathered around, it was never about redemption or revenge. He wasn't trying to impress anyone, and he wasn't trying to be remembered. He was just showing up for them. The kids, the ones who reminded him of the boy he used to be. Every Tuesday and Thursday, right after the final bell, that corner of the library filled with chatter, questions, scribbled notes, and wide eyes as Lamar walked students through math problems they once feared. Not because he had all the answers, but because he made them believe they could find those answers themselves. That's what stuck. There was Isaiah, the freshman who nearly failed algebra last semester, now solving quadratic equations without a hint of panic. Tasha, who used to hate math, now leading mini-sessions on weekends for her cousins using Lamar's notes. He never stood at the front like a traditional teacher. He sat beside them, talked with them, asked them questions before answering theirs. Gradually, more teachers started dropping by, not to supervise, just to learn how he was doing it. Miss Lynn asked if she could adopt some of his explanations for her class. Coach Rivera asked if Lamar would help set up a summer prep group for incoming freshmen. Even Braddock, hesitant and prideful, started stopping by regularly. Not every day, but often enough. He'd quietly offer an extra problem or two and eventually began offering words of encouragement to the kids. The edge in his voice had dulled. Something in Lamar had softened. One day, during a tutoring session, Braddock lingered after the students left. "You know," he said, looking at the board, "I used to think this job made me important. Teaching gave me power." Lamar didn't interrupt, letting the words sink in. "But you've reminded me what it's really about. Showing up, making it count." Lamar just nodded. "We all lose our way sometimes," he said. He didn't hold grudges, and he didn't need to. A month later, Principal Everett called Lamar in again. There was a proposal on the table to formalize his tutoring sessions into an elective class next semester, not for credit, but for enrichment, a bridge between students and their own confidence. "We'll have to jump through some hoops," Everett warned. "But if you're willing—" Lamar gently shook his head. "I appreciate it," he said. "But I don't need the title. I'd rather keep it simple. Let the kids come because they want to, not because it's on a schedule." Everett nodded. "Then we'll support you however we can." Word spread beyond the school district. A local reporter stopped by to interview him, but Lamar kept it short. "No dramatic story, no self-promotion. I'm just showing them what they already have inside," he said. "Sometimes it takes a little time to see it." In the spring, Eisenberg High hosted its annual student showcase, science projects, art displays, choir performances, and in one corner of the gym, a booth titled Dorsey's Table. It displayed student-written reflections on math, life, and confidence. Dozens of students had written about how Lamar helped them see more in themselves, not because he gave them answers, but because he listened and believed. By the end of the night, people weren't asking, "Is he the janitor?" anymore. They were saying, "That's Mr. Dorsey." He didn't wear a suit, he didn't give a speech. He stood by the table, smiled, and thanked the students who came by. Later that evening, back at his apartment, Lamar pulled out the old Purdue sweatshirt from the box under his bed. He didn't put it on. Instead, he folded it neatly, placed it in a new storage bin, and added a folder filled with student thank you notes beside it. Legacy, he realized, isn't about titles. It's about what you leave behind in others. He didn't need to finish school to teach. He didn't need a degree to lead. He just needed to show up every day and care. And that's exactly what he planned to keep doing. Thanks for listening to Lamar's story. If it moved you, if it reminded you of someone you've overlooked, or someone who believed in you, subscribe and share it with someone who needs it. Because sometimes the biggest minds are hiding in the quietest places.